Good evening, good evening, good evening from the dark and dreary world. I have had COVID. It is the day after Christmas Day. In the United Kingdom, we call this Boxing Day. It's where you box up all of your slaughtered relatives before burying them in a shallow grave in the woods. It's a joke. That's not why we call it Boxing Day. I have spent the entire time in isolation, and I have loved it. No, I'm joking. I'm terribly sad. I really do have COVID. Me saying it over and over again will probably do something horrible to this video. I'm just pulling up the community because I asked you to ask me questions, and I want to make sure that I answer them. But before we get into your questions, I'm going to talk a little bit about karma, consequences, strategies, and genetics. See, I know I'm shadow banned because normally when I ask you guys a question on my YouTube community, if it's 12 hours before, I get like 60 questions. You want to know how many I have? 4. Cheers, YouTube. Thanks, guys. Oh, dear. So, okay. Let's talk about the main subject first. This is a way that I would like you to start looking at problems and situations in your life and moving forward into the future. It's very easy, I think, especially in times where we are drowning in content, to start a conversation halfway through and to start a conversation or a discussion as though we all know what the given coordinates are and we all agree to the given coordinates of that situation. This can be, I'm going to have to talk a little bit quieter than I would normally because this thing has hit me in the throat. This creates a tendency to lead towards assumption about the nature of the story that we're being told and that we're inside of ourselves. Because we're drowning in content, I would claim that we are somewhat drowning in story. And I then wanted to ask the question, how do we get out of that? I hope that makes sense. I'm going to talk about things that are complicated. I'm going to try and talk about them as simply as I can, because if I talk about them in a highfalutin, complicated way, it's good for my ego. It's very aggrandizing. I can sound clever and literate and verbose, but it's not going to do you much good. These ideas at first blush, you might think, oh, that's a bit heavy. I don't really know how to get my head around that. But stick with me. I'm going to make this really, really straight. The first thing is strategy and genetics. Well, I didn't come here to listen about genetics. What are we talking about that for? Particularly epigenetics. You might be familiar nowadays with the idea that when someone, especially in the field of psychology, when somebody says, oh, that's genetic, like a predisposition or a behavioral tendency is genetic, you may be aware that that's a bit out of date. It's a bit of a dated way of talking about things. In the age of epigenetics, epi meaning above, where we know that it is not the case that your genetic code is the final word on how you will behave and how you will act and what your character will be in life, when we know that the environment, that the age-old debate between nature and nurture is fundamentally flawed. It's not that it's nature or nurture, it's that you can't extricate the two. You can't say, here's the discrete boundary between nature and between nurture. They operate with each other. The idea then that we can say, oh, this person is depressed, or they're schizophrenic, or they are highly anxious or highly neurotic, and we can just say it's genetic and walk away, is now ludicrous in the age of epigenetics. It's ludicrous. And it's a non-scientific cop-out. And you might say to me, well, who the hell are you to say that. You're not a geneticist. No, I'm not. But I've been involved in this debate and written about it for 23 years. And you don't need to take it from me. What I just said is paraphrasing something that Robert Sapolsky has said. Professor Robert Sapolsky, a professor of biology, neuroendocrinology, and neurology at the University of Stanford. The days of saying, oh, it's genetic, and that's the end of it, should be put behind us. It's ludicrous to say it. It was meaningless to say it now. To say it in that way, oh, it's genetic, that's it, it's in your genes, done. It doesn't work like that. In the age of epigenetics, it doesn't work like that. I am not a geneticist. But as I understand it, genes can be switched or will switch on and off. And they are sequences. The syntax of the genes that are switched on and off is also important. So it's not just whether the sleeve of genes is on, off, on, off, on, off, on. It's not just that, it's where, it's the syntax of which one is on, which one is off, and where it goes. Syntax, like in language, is if I say the dog bit Johnny, the dog bit Johnny. If I change the syntax, it changes the meaning. Johnny bit the dog. They're the same words, but because they're now in a new syntax, a new sequence, the new genetic sequence, it's a completely different expression. Why am I talking about this? Because I want you to start just thinking, just as a little thought experiment philosophically. If you imagine that over here is the beginning of things, is the dawning of things, is the genesis, is the first book of anything, your life, relationships, business enterprises, politics, government, civilizations, let's put it over here. And we say it begins and then it fires out across time. And across time, things are happening. Time is accumulating here. Time is accumulating and accumulating and accumulating and accumulating until finally you have consequence. So you have cause and then you have effect, and it's measured out across time. Think of it as a rocket. This now is karma. When you think of karma, don't get weird, don't get spiritual and fuzzy. It's science. It was the first, I claim, it is claimed, not just by me, but many people have claimed it. It's one of our first efforts at scientific, rational thought that we can trace back because we still have the literature. It's the Vedic tradition. It goes back to India. These are efforts to think with clarity beyond subjectivity into some kind of objectivity. What is karma? Oh, karma's when an elephant-headed god with 16 arms sees you doing something good and sends an ice cream your way. No, that's not karma. Etymologically, that's not karma. There are systems, there are Vedic traditions that do veer that way, but etymologically, in its purest form, karma is very, very simple. Karma is a Sanskrit word. It means action. It's a Newtonian principle. There is action and there is reaction. Genetics, the sequence, the code, the source code of a person, of a life, of an enterprise, of a relationship, of a civilization. It goes out over time. Time accumulates. There is impact in the world. And think of it like hours, minutes, hours, days, cultivate. Tiny, tiny micro decisions are made that are guiding this missile in different directions, trying to keep it onto some kind of destination, explicit or implicit. It's moving through time. Your relationship, your personality, who you are, it moves through time. It has a genetic sequence that guides it. It has a source code that guides it. It has a genesis, a genealogy, and it can be traced back. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Karma, same principle. There is action and there is reaction. It's thermodynamics. It's Newtonian physics. Don't get weird with it. If you do, you'll get lost. You get and it's not an east-west thing. There are plenty of people in the East completely lost up their own bum holes with this stuff. There are traditional orthodox schools of Buddhism that are completely lost up their own bumholes with this stuff. And it's a bastardization of the original meaning. Because why? Because of genetics, because of a genealogy, because of a narrative. There's a software fault in human beings that wants to displace responsibility. We crave the displacement of responsibility in the way we crave salt, sugar, and carbohydrates. It's in the DNA, I claim. So with Buddhism, with karma, what happened with it? Oh, we turn Buddha into a god, and then we'll offer sacrifices to the god, and then he'll reward us or punishment in terms with our sacrifices. There are schools of Buddhism that think like that. It's directly oppositional to what the man taught, but there you go. That's how perverse humans are. We can take love your brother, love your neighbor, forgive all, forgive the prostitutes, be with the lepers and the outcasts, and then 1,500 years later be like pulling somebody's fingernails out in the name of the person who said forgive everybody, love everybody, everyone's your neighbor, it's all you, love is all that matters. Yeah, we're pulling your fingernails out in the name of the guy that said love is all that matters. So humans are perverse. Why? It's genetic. So we displace the responsibility. We say it's genetic. It's just a genetic tendency. But I'm being ironic. Are you catching it? It's genetic in the sense that if there is a tendency in the source code and it's in the DNA over here, then over time, if we say, no, it's not genetic, that's not the same thing as saying there's no impact. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to break down the polarity here. We think it's absolutely hardwired into your DNA that you are depressed or successful or unusually happy, right? Whatever. And on the other side, we say, no, we absolutely only think it's your culture. Everybody is born as a blank slate and then it's trained into you. And you look at these two things, and if you're like this, like, okay, you guys who say it's all culture, where's your culture come from? Is it bereft of genetic influence? Isn't culture genetic? And these guys over there, it's hardwired into your DNA. Epigenetics, doesn't the environment affect genetic expression? So it doesn't work. We have to get away from these polarizations and bring them together. What is the sequence? What is the sequence? Where are we going? What have we built that's now flying through time and space on this trajectory of karma that's creating action and reaction? Because whatever you do, there's an equal and opposite force to that doing. Karma means action, reaction. It's a Newtonian principle. So genetics, karma, consequence. And now I'm going to talk to you about strategy. All religious systems talk about consequence. There is no such thing as a religious system that won't touch on consequence. As you reap, so shall you sow. Here is the law of karma. Here are the hermetic laws of magic. What we put out into the world, it has an effect on us. It comes back to us. Try, if you're seeking to heal, if you're seeking to live a better life, if you want to move forward, try to remove story and just think, what happened? What was the source code? What were the component parts? And what was the consequence? Everything, every event, a night. You take a night out with your friends. It starts here and it ends up here. It begins and it ends. It doesn't really. These are all mental constructs, but we can't escape them, so why not work with them? But what was the genetic source code of that? If you ended up having there's a group of 6 girls who go out, by the end of the night, 2 of them have fallen out with each other at 3 o'clock in the morning. The root of them falling out with each other at 3 o'clock in the morning over here began in the source code of the night of an argument that took place 2 years ago. The past is the future. What we realize is that the future echoes backward into the past. The future echoes all the future events. It doesn't just happen and echo forward. It echoes backwards through the timeline as well. So this is where you can start to see that the idea that the division between the cause and the effect is more of a mental construct. That's a mental construct. You go, well, there's the cause and there's the effect. And I would say, well, where are you going to, if I give you a scalpel, where do you cut between the cause and the effect? Isn't cause effect and effect cause? Isn't it cyclical, circular, karma? Therefore, it's action, reaction, action, reaction. It's not action, reaction, is it? It's not. It's instant. In a certain sense, from a certain perspective, there's no this is a mental construct. Oh, it starts here, time goes by, 15 years, 25 years, 30 years, and bang, then it happened over here. Where? In the future. What's that then? I know it's a little highfalutin. Stick with me. So you bring it back and you go, okay, well, so then cause is effect and effect is cause if we accept that it's really hard to do a discrete cut, to be like, no, this is the moment where life changed. Only in films, only in sci-fi movies, only in, I watched Vanilla Sky for the first time in 20 years, the English version. And they even specifically identify a moment in the narrative of that film, the split, where things go from one mode to another mode completely. That only happens in movies. For us in the real world, we're never given that alleviation. We're never given the alleviation of knowing where the split is, because there is no split. It's satisfying when you're consuming a narrative to go, oh, now they're in the Matrix. Oh, now he's in a virtual reality pod. That's like, oh, phew. No, we don't get to know that. We don't get that moment. We never get it. We crave it, but we don't get it. So just think about anything that happens. What was the beginning? What was the genealogy of this? You have the old biblical books, and it starts with a book. God, I can't remember its name. It's something to do with genetics. And in these old books, there's an awful lot of cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. Fred begat Rob, who begat Terry, who begat Steve, who begat Frederica, who begat Sarah, who begat Mary. It's genealogy. These are lineages, and they matter. Maybe not to us too much, but they matter to the people of the day. They mattered for somebody at some time. These are ancient books. We don't know precisely how old they are, like probably 3,500, 4,000 years old. But these genealogies, they matter. The family tree matters. Karma, family tree, DNA, genetics. Where are we going? We're 18 minutes in. Stay with me. Trust me. Once upon a time, I was sat at a dinner table with a man called Sam Vaknin. And Sam was asking me about neurolinguistic programming. So what is this NLP? What is this? I hear about it. What do you do it for? Like, what's the good thing with it? So I gave him my honest opinion of its strengths and its weaknesses. And I'll share with you now what I think. I mean, if you want me to tear shreds off NLP, we can do an hour and a half of that, but it wouldn't be a good use of anybody's time. But you want to know what I think the real strength of it was, past tense, and still is useful. And I told Sam this. It's when NLP makes certain assumptions about people. And there's two that I use to this day that are very powerful, that have helped me with myself, with clients, and you can use them as well. The first one is, I shared this with Sam, is when we view people as computers. And Sam said, this is ridiculous, people aren't computers. I was like, I know, but it's an assumption that if you do it as though, metaphorically as though. So a person has a stream of consciousness running, and inside of that stream of consciousness, there's unconscious elements, there's conscious elements, there's parts of their identity, parts of their behavior, parts of their interaction with other people. They have a certain story that they're living, but it's not spontaneous. It's never spontaneous. It's a prefabricated story. And they live it again and again and again. In neurolinguistic programming, these things where we look at the human being, humans are not computers. Don't do this. It's useful to some degree to have this model. That's all. You look at the person, you look at your client, and you say, okay, they're living a story. What is the story? And then NLP, neurolinguistic programming, tries to apply principles that to me look similar to epigenetics to human consciousness. I know. Stay with me. I know. But this is good. What neurolinguistic programming tries to do is it says, okay, the human mind is functioning like a computer and it's running programs. So when you hear Chris Rea sing and then you start thinking sad thoughts about your ex-wife, that's like when adware pops up on your laptop or a program starts running on your laptop and it runs in a predictable way. When I was at university, was obsessed with the way that the American military had spent a huge amount of money trying to create super soldiers using neurolinguistic programming. And they were particularly interested in this. And I have I've bragged about this before, I have the documents from, where are they from? Some from the American Army, some from some state office for Project Jedi. They're in a loft somewhere right now with coffee stains on them because I just asked for them when I was a student and doing psychology. I just used the pay-up phone, put a coin in it, and I phoned America and it said, excuse me, I'm studying psychology and I'm interested in Project Jedi. Can I see what you did? And some nice older sounding American lady was just, well, by golly, by Jesus, that sure is sweet. And she sent me the whole thing. She sent it to me in the post. She photocopied it all and just sent me the whole thing. And I did a dissertation on it. And what they were interested in was not just where strategies are for heartbreak or depression. So I just said to you, like, I hear a sad song by Chris Rea and I'd start thinking sad thoughts about my ex-wife, or in the realm of CPTSD, I smell the smell of bleach, and I was, beaten by my father, and he threw me to the floor of the bathroom, and it smelled of bleach, and so those two things are now associated, right? So the negative things, but we also have strategies for everything we do in life, including shooting, driving, talking, public speaking, whatever it is. And they wanted to be able to break down those strategies so that they could teach soldiers to learn faster and to be better soldiers. I'm not making this up, by the way. It's called Project Jedi. You can look it up. The American government spent a huge amount of money trying to create super soldiers who were like Jedis. It's from the 80s. Anthony Robbins was involved. John Grinder was involved. And Richard Bandler was involved. Their names, they're officially named in these papers as well. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a secret. It's out. This is known. It is known, Khaleesi. It's out there. So how I said that they tried to treat it like genetics. Okay. So what did they do? What they did was they would look at a strategy in a person, like epigenetics, and they would say, where is the strategy born and how does it manifest? What is the source code, the computing source code, the genetic code for the strategy? And guess what? It's a sequence, just like a genetic sequence. And if you know what you're doing and you're trained in this, in neurolinguistic programming, specifically for strategies, you can turn off elements of that genetic sequence in that strategy epigenetically to create new outcomes. And you can change the syntax, which changes the gene expression. I am stretching this metaphor to its top limits, but please be patient. Let me give you a super brief, how this would work. Say I'm really good with a pistol. I'm a good pistol shot, and it's combat shooting, so I have to, at the sound of an alarm, I jump up from a press-up position, a stress position. I jump up, I draw my sidearm, I fire into center mass, and then I take cover. Super simple, something like that, yeah? When I do that, And I'm doing that better than, the top 95% of other soldiers around me at a higher level, the presupposition was I have a superior strategy. So they would say, well, what is this man's strategy? What is this soldier's strategy? Or I'm a helicopter pilot and I'm really good under combat conditions. What is this? What is her strategy? What is this soldier's strategy? How do we get it out of their head so we can hand it over to other people? And they would elicit it step by step. It's called strategy elicitation. Is it something that you're feeling, hearing, or seeing? Visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? VAK. And then they would start listing it. They go, well, the first thing is I do is I breathe and I become internally focused. Okay, so it's kinesthetic, internal. So you'd write K, I, and then you write what they were doing and physically what would happen. Then I clear my mind and I say to myself, listen, or get ready. Oh, auditory, internal. And then I start listening. Auditory internal to auditory external. So you have KI, AI to AE, auditory external. I'm not going to bore you with this, but imagine now you're starting to build a sequence. VK, VA, VK, VK, IE, AA, A to K, K to V. And so it goes on like that. And if you change any part of that sequence, it completely changes the outcome. I'm going to start at 26 minutes. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to start driving this home to the point now. The story of why you're in pain is important and it's interesting and it happened and you should know it and you should talk to somebody about it. The story of why our political landscape looks the way it does is important and interesting and we should talk about it. The story of why you've got no money but you want to make more money is important and interesting and we should talk about it. You know what I just said about strategies and epigenetics and source code? Like whatever the source code is, whatever the strategy is, whatever the epigenetic sequence is, whatever the strategic sequence is, it's going over time to give me my result. You focusing on the story of why that is the way it is not, where do you think that's going to lead you to? Everybody loves a little bit of tough love. Everybody enjoys, or most people, there's a certain fraction of the population that hate it, love being told, listen, kid, sort your life out, get your head out of your arse, get back to work, come on, if you want something to happen, make it happen. We all need that. And it's culturally, there's a lack of that. So that flavor is missing. So when we taste it, I'm obsessed with taste and flavor because I can't fucking taste or smell anything because I have COVID. When we taste it, we want more. But I think it's easy to become quite corny with that, and to, as the kids say, to get a little cringy with it if you overdo it. Moving forward in 2022, I do want to do more material like that. I do want to motivate people. I do want to push people because I think it's going to help them. But I want to stay at the border of cringe without dropping into the pool of cringe, the border of corny without going into the pool of corniness. So here's now bringing everything I've just said together. It is important that we realize we have a genetic predisposition, source code predisposition, deep desire to absolve ourselves of responsibility. And to view that with no judgment. It's just code. We're in the matrix, it's just code. It's just like that now. But the metaphors and the stories I've just given you, I hope you can internalize at the unconscious level that these things can be changed and they should be changed. They can be changed and they should be changed. People generally don't change. Okay, so let me do it again. I said like the strategies, the epigenetic sequence. What's the gene sequence for this virus? What's the gene sequence for this strategy? What's the gene sequence for this personality, this relationship, this business, this political ideology, whatever it is? Sorry, my voice. 1 second. been talking like the bastard son of Tom Waits and Leonard Cohen for 3 days. Sound like one of those, the two-dimensional characters that the mobster in the movie who for some reason can't talk. Like he talks like he's had throat cancer or something. Batman. Oh. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. So you look at it and you say, okay, here's the source code for it, and here's the consequence of what it's going to be over here. Can it be changed? And the answer is yes. Moving forward, what are we going to do? What are we going to do, guys? What are we going to do? What kind of a world do we want to create? We need some fresh perspectives. We need some fresh ways of looking at things, because the best indicator of past behavior, the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. That was a Freudian slip, a Freudian time slip, a Freudian slit through time. The best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. So if we're in this genetic cycle of regenesis, we're reborn, we're dying and we're being reborn. We die every night in a certain sense. Let's make a mystical point. When our eyes hermetically seal for the night, the coffin lid closes. We die. That person's gone. It's like that movie. What is it called? The Prestige. We die and we die and we die and we die and we die, and we're born again, fresh. But what is born with us every day? It depends on what's in the code for the day. What's in the genetic source code for that day? What's in the genetic source code for us? Why are we doing the same stupid mistakes over and over again? Because we're trying to, if you say a person is action, reaction, is cause, effect, is genetics, and then consequence, most of our solutions, so here, I think this is backwards for you. It's the right way around for you, backwards for me, maybe. Don't be solipsistic, Richard. This is the consequence, and this is the causation. Most of our solutions are kind of out here or somewhere along here. We're trying to sort of point to the causation, and I'm saying we haven't got time. None of us have time. We're not here for long enough. We must cut to the root of our problems. It's a metaphor, but it's meaningful, and it always has been, and it always will be. What is the genealogy of this? What is the pathology? How do we go back to the beginning and say, okay, what is this? But don't just stop there. Change it. Change the genetic expression. Change the sleeve sequence so that we generate new results unconsciously without effort. I think that this is crucial. Excuse me. I have to speak quieter. We have a propensity to avoid responsibility. And I'm not saying just heap responsibility on yourself. Like, that's going to do you good and some, like, penitent, cover yourself in ash and, I don't know, whip yourself on the back or carry a big heavy cross. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that really, you could say, is like a neurotic counterbalance. Something is sick, so we do something just as sick and neurotic in response to it. That's crazy. But if it's not you, who's running your life? If it's not me, who's running my life? If I just keep, so back to genetics again. Say if I have epigenetically in the source code the tendency to absolve responsibility, and I'm a person, and it runs for 20 years, and for 20 years, every opportunity to take on responsibility, I take it and I push it back, I take it and I push it back. 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 5 week, 6 week, 500 weeks, 15 years, 16 years, 17 years, 18 years, 19 years, 20 years. Push back, push back, push back. And I'm training that. I've been trained. I'm good. You can't catch me. I got that peekaboo with a bit of Philly shell on it. You can't catch me with a responsibility because I'm too fast. I'll see it coming. I'll dodge it. You can't catch me with a responsibility. I won't take it. It slips right off me. Okay. Then what? And then you go, oh, look at all this consequence. Who did this? Who's did this? Well, I want to find a way of getting around this this issue, because I know that people really hate it. Like, some people really, really hate it if I say, look, it's got to be you. It has to be you. There isn't anyone else. My view, maybe if I explain it with a bit more depth and a bit more nuance, people won't be so offended by it. If we say, it is not my responsibility, I am purely the victim of circumstance and trauma and things that other people did to me, I have to leave you by the side of the road where I found you. Nobody can do anything for you, because now you're a bucket with a hole in it. You're a hole with a bucket in it. Well, you're a bucket with a hole in it, and all the care, psychotherapy, help, training, assistance, guidance goes right out the hole in the bucket, because it's going to be hard to say this without sounding a bit woo. So let's try and say it without sounding woo. See this epigenetic thing? Let's pick it up again. If you say, I'm the pure victim of circumstance, I have no agency, I never did in my past, I never do, and I never will. I never did, I never do, I never will. Past, present, future. You're doing that same thing of repeatedly practicing just handing back responsibility. What can I do for you? What can anyone do for you? In a weird, perverse way, you're expressing your power through powerlessness. You're going, no, I'm determined to be powerless. I go, okay. It's almost like there are yogis who do that. What do they call them? And they've taken sannyas. Are they sadhus? I think they're sadhus who do things like they'll just lie down for 20 years, or they'll walk with their hand up above their head for 10 years until everything atrophies. So you're expressing your power. Your power is your powerlessness. You're stoically, stubbornly, with muscle, you're just refusing. No responsibility, not here. In a way, I respect that. No, not in a way. I absolutely respect that. That's your will. That's your will in action. And that's your choice, your karma, your dharma, your life. But I can't help you. You're unhelpable. You're helpless. And I have to leave you where I found you, by the side of the dusty, dusty road. Because all I'm going to do is waste my time and my energy that could either go to me or could go to people I can help. Do you understand what I'm saying? When it comes to this thing of genealogy, genesis, and genetics, it echoes throughout time. Intergenerational trauma carries its own cause-effect karmic weight. It is hard to push back on because it's powerful. It's got its own gravity. And you can't do it muscularly. You can't do it with rigidity and resistance. The only way out of this is to level up the perspective. We have to level up our perspectives. What? So you come and you say, I was in a narcissistically abusive relationship. I'm a codependent. I can't make money. I can't lose weight. I can't do this. I can't do that. Oh, I didn't give you the second thing that NLP is useful for. That's called a nested loop that needs closing in NLP. I'll give it to you now. We've got to look at the source code. How is this manifesting? How is this occurring? And here's the second useful part of NLP. I promised you before. Assume that the client is okay. So assume you're doing it right. Don't assume you're broken. Don't assume it's not useful or that it's wrong. You're operating perfectly well. This is a presupposition from neurolinguistic programming. The client is operating perfectly well. They're either in alignment with their objectives or they're not. So what reminded me of that was the dieting thing. So you said, well, I'm too fat and I can't diet and I keep failing my diets and something's wrong and I'm broken and I failed. NLP would, from the strategic point of view, say, well, no, because what's the genesis of that behavior and that end result? You have a strategy there, and it might be perfect for somebody else, What if somebody's critically underweight following an accident or surgery or something, and they've been told by the doctors you need to gain weight quickly? The strategy that you're complaining about, that you're saying is awful, might not be in alignment with your objectives, but it's not the strategy that's wrong. It's just operating in the wrong place. It might be perfect for somebody else. And they would take that epigenetic sequence. How do you think about food? How is it that you overeat consistently every day? That's successful. You've got a result there. That's some real commitment and discipline. You overate by 600 calories every day for 200 days straight, and you gain weight. Good for you. You just change it. It's a reframe. So assume that everything is working. It's working, it's functioning. There's no moral judgment there. It's just wrong strategy, wrong place, wrong person, wrong time, wrong environment, something like that. So, I did it inside of 41 minutes and 1 second. That was what I wanted to say. This is something I'm going to come back to again and again. I think we kind of need a way of leveling up outside of the problems and not falling prey to the terrible temptation. How should I put it? There's a gossip pleasure in talking about the past and talking about pain. There's a gossip pleasure in therapy. Careful. Beware of the things that pleasure you. Beware of the things that pleasure you, and be aware of the things that pleasure you. They're not always great. Just because something feels good doesn't mean it is good. Just because something feels bad doesn't mean it is bad. So there is a gossipy temptation here, a whinging temptation. Like the human mind, something's bad and I didn't like it and it sucked. And then you complain about it, and then you practice complaining, and it echoes through time again and again and again and again. What does that change? Great, you spent 2 years complaining how much your last relationship sucked, how you can't lose weight, how you can't make money, or whatever it is you're trying to do to sort your life out. And losing weight and making money are very important things. If you're just looking at overcoming your last relationship, but you're not increasing your sovereignty and your agency by making more money, and you're not taking care of your physical body by letting it just fall into disrepair so that you become sick and so that you become addicted and so you die younger, you're missing the point. Money is good. Health is good. These things are necessary. They should be a part of your recovery procedure. They must be. Because if you're broke and recovered, good for you. You're still at the mercy of people who have more money than you. So I'm now going to take questions. We're at 648 viewers. When it gets to 666, I'll make the sign of the devil and sing the Iron Maiden song. Adrenochrome. 666, the number of the beast. Hell and fire was born to be released. I knew you were Illuminati, bro. I knew you were. You keep throwing out those Illuminati signs, bro. I knew you were Illuminati, brev. Do you get me? I knew you was in the Illuminati, though, brev. Do you get me, though? Okay, 4 questions. Remarkable. Used to get 60, now it's 4. Thanks, YouTube. Sister G has asked, this is in the community section, then I'll answer your questions in the chat. Don't write them just yet. If you do have a question for me, make it short, make it 1 question, have it end in a sentence mark, and before you post it, read it out loud to yourself and imagine this dude has no idea who I am, no idea what my story is, and no idea what I'm thinking about. And craft it so the dude that's me, has a chance to answer you meaningfully so that we can have an interaction that you benefit from, please. Sister G asks, would you consider creating some content or course material around what you did in schools? I would consider it if people thought it was useful. This is the kind of thing that gets people real triggered because real triggery, because you're talking about kids and what their kids should be focused on, what their kids should be learning about. But I'll give it a go if you want me to. Needs a haircut asks, please could you do a video about how you were taught to read a research paper with steps and broadly applicable principles? I can do. It's going to descend into a rant though. I was ranting at a student just the other day. I think I may have called her and her classmates a bunch of fucking morons. I don't think I know that that's what I said. They're not taught how to do referencing at university anymore. They have not been taught how to read research papers. Sorry, let me be clear with you. Students at university now, apparently, when I was speaking to this girl and she was asking me for help, they're not taught where to find research papers. Never heard of Google Scholar. So you don't even have to pay a subscription for this. It's free. Not taught how to read them and not taught how to do referencing. University students. Super. Well done, everybody. Now we have make everybody an idiot. Yeah, I'll do a video on looking at psychology, on how I was taught to read. Well, I can't really remember how I was taught to read research papers. What I'll do is I'll teach you how I quickly skim psychology research papers, yeah? Because if you wanted to learn how to do it properly, there's already videos on YouTube teaching you how to do it properly. So if you want my lazy arse way of doing it, I'm probably better off teaching you that rather than to presume to teach you something a professor should teach you. Second question is, you've mentioned that you've seen a number of different counsellors and psychotherapists. When you changed counsellors, why did you decide to change? E.g., I think you mean I.e. Sorry. It's I.e. Is id est. You saw an Irish guy who you said helped you a lot. And recently you said that you were seeing someone who specialised in transactional analysis. You said that the specific mode of therapy did not matter as much as the rapport that one has with a therapist. So what has been the deciding factor when you've chosen to find a new therapist? The trauma in my life, like if I feel like I have to talk to somebody, that's the deciding factor. When the trauma passes, I usually terminate the therapeutic relationship. Why did you decide to change? When you changed counsellors, why did you decide to change? Sorry, to make sense of your question, I have to make assumptions about what it seems to be that you're asking. It sounds like you think I had a counsellor and I went, I'm sick of him, I'll get a new one. No, that the Irish chap, Robert Mooney, I saw him face to face when I lived in Dublin. I've stopped living in Dublin. I haven't lived in Dublin since May of 2017. The latest psychotherapist I've been working with, I started seeing when I was living in Ibiza this year. So that's 4 years later. I was not doing therapy for 4 years. And we saw each other not face to face in the real world, but over Zoom. So yeah, it's the trauma. But if I feel like I need it, then I go back into it. Emma McDonough asks, so many questions, lol. Lol. Is strategically using karma manipulation? Is strategically using karma manipulation? And just how much should we be manipulating our reality? Is strategically using karmic manipulation, and just how much should we be manipulating our reality? Are we clinging to a rudder that has little to no bearing on our direction now? The storm is so effing big. Love is the only way out of this storm as survivors. But as the Black Eyed Peas said, where is it? Everyone hates each other. So much contempt and victimism. I'm tired, and yet feels like there's work to be done. How do you keep going when everything is so exhausting? These are interesting questions, Emma. I'm not sure I understood the core of what you were asking me specifically. These feel more like interesting openers for a conversation. I think I resonate with the essence of what you're asking, but I didn't really get like a question for me to answer that. Okay, guys. So in the live chat, if you have a question, if you can make it one sentence long and then a question mark, read it out loud before you post it, assuming that I have no idea what we're talking about before you do so. Question. Would you consider collaborating with Joe Dispenza to help people heal? Yeah, sure. Carrie asks, how do you know when it's time to move on from a therapist? This is not advice. This is just me personally. I think, well, I feel like I know when the therapeutic relationship, we've probably done all that it is that we're going to do, and it comes to an end. Yeah, if I don't think there's anything more than I'm going to get from it, then I would move on. And I would just say that to the therapist. I'm always polite and respectful, but I would just say, I think it's time for me to move on. Oh, I like it when people start questions with the word question. I have a lot of snot right inside my skull, here and here. Don't get COVID, kids. It sucks. Johan, wait, how do you convince someone consumed by self-hate that doing good is as easy as just allowing yourself to be good, to do good, despite you never succeeded before? Richard, how do you convince someone consumed by self-hate that doing good? I don't spend much time trying to convince people of things, Miley. I'll just leave people alone. If somebody's convinced of a thing, then I would just observe it and go, oh, there we go. It's a thing that you're into. If they're consumed by self-hate, as you say, if that's true, it's going to be very hard for you to reach them because their self-hatred won't allow you to reach them. So I'm afraid I don't have much for you there. I don't have strategies that I would, but I'm not big on changing other people's minds. I just sort of feel like let people be. Let people be. I'm currently working on creating a training for people who want to stop smoking. Good for you, Louis. I'll let you know if you need support. Okay. Questions, please, guys. Sister G says, I think the answer to this question is don't be a dead fish. Althea makes me think of a cat walking and we first see the head, then the body, finally tail. Is the tail the cause of the head or vice versa? Looking forward to the 30-day challenge. Jessica says, someone consumed by self-hate needs a role model who loves themselves. That's an interesting position. I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with that. I don't know what to make of a situation where I'm told that a third person that I'm not speaking to is consumed with self-hate. I don't know what to make of that at all. I think I'd really want to speak to the person directly and hear what their sense of the situation is, rather than come up with prescriptions. And people are consumed with self-hate, really consumed with self-hate. as I have been in my life, is it enough to just offer them role models that love themselves? I don't think it would have reached me. Interesting conversation, though. Thank you for your input. ADY music. How do abusers take over your inner voice, and how do I separate from it? Well, I'm glad that you've asked this technically ridiculously complicated question. So, your inner voice, when you say taking over your inner voice, they've not actually taken over your inner voice, but it can feel like that. So what's actually happening is that their abusive messages to you resonate with your pre-existing abusive introjects, typically. That's typically what happens. If you don't have pre-existing abusive introjects, meaning messages that are seemingly spontaneously fired to you from the superego down, then they will put them there. But those two, obviously, there's not just two situations, but there's a sliding scale of the force of the abuse. Not all abuse is created equal. If you're fundamentally a prisoner in your own house, it's physical and psychological as well, then they can create negative introjects in you. If it's not like that, and it's much more subtle, if you already have pre-existing negative superego introjects, their behavior and their words will combine with your pre-existing negative superego introjects to work against you. I did that fairly quick. Quite happy with that answer. I hope that helps ADY music. Question: are you a narcissist? Good Lord. If you're asking if I have narcissistic personality disorder, no, the answer is no. If I was going to have been clinically diagnosed with a disorder, it would be much more likely that it would have been borderline. I don't have the resilience or the delusion or the lack of empathy, sadly, that a grandiose classic narcissist has. Possibly when I was younger, I might have got an antisocial personality disorder, but I'm much closer to people who are antisocial and borderline than I am to narcissists. I hope that answers your question. Matt W says, Andrew Tate said in a short video that therapy is useless and depression isn't real. Have you ever watched that? No, I'm not familiar with that. No, I've never heard of that video, and I don't know who Andrew Tate is. And I don't know what. I mean, one of the first questions. It's a strange thing to say. If he's got a background in psychology, if he's educated in psychology, at least a degree level, it's a pretty strong statement. It's not unheard of. There are people who are trained in psychology who do think that therapy is not just useless but dangerous. Depression isn't real. I've not heard that one for a long time. I've not heard that one since I was in my 20s. And some statements are simply counter-scientific, meaning they're just against the broadest body of peer-reviewed researched evidence. Therapy is useless or therapy is dangerous, where there is actually peer-reviewed research that indicates that has some legs. the idea that depression isn't real, the only way I think you could construct that argument is if you went like, you'd have to go down some sort of postmodern, ultra radical leftist, social constructionist route. And at the end of it, you'd be like, yeah, of course, people get really sad, and of course, people grieve, and of course, like the body shuts down, and basically, you'd have to, at the end of it, you'd be like, yeah, of course, depression is real, but we shouldn't call it depression. But the idea that like people aren't all across the globe sat around right now with this identified cluster of symptoms is just ludicrous. Like it's beyond ludicrous. It's I don't know. And what else? The Earth is flat and the Moon is made of cheese. I mean, it's fucking insane. So don't know who Andrew Tate is. Don't know what his background is, but the therapy is useless thing has legs. Depression isn't real. I have heard that from a psychologist before, but it was a long time ago. I'd love to know what his position is on that. Well, no, I wouldn't. I don't give a fuck. Don't tell me. I frankly don't give a shit. Life is too short, and lunatics are in abundance. Oh, Zachariah Adil is here. Everybody follow Zachariah Adil on Instagram, and if you're interested in tarot astrology, you should definitely read some of his work. It's great stuff. I know many people who are sick right now. Might the powers that be amping up the 5 gangsters? Who knows, my mate? Who knows where we are in this particular game of cause and effect? Sally Francis says, we used to spend Boxing Day with relatives. Now we listen to Richard. Listen, I hope some of you have like mince pies and turkey sandwiches or something. I haven't had any of that. I've had solitude and silence for Christmas. Johan says, I can see in the colour on Richard's face that his viral load is big. Lad, my viral load is massive. Yeah, the way I think I caught this is like straight out of the textbook for getting a massive viral load all over my face. so for it's past now, but for 48 hours I was very, very sick. I did not feel good at all. And then like it just stopped. Like 10 o'clock at night I was reading my book and I was like, I'm sick, I'm reading my book, I'm sick. And they went, oh, I'm not as sick now. It just stopped. I sound like shit and I don't feel great, but it did just stop. Anyway. Oh. Jib says, depression isn't real. There's no more valid a statement than happiness is not real. Mere opinion and a little look at meism. Well, yeah, and to be fair, like I don't know what this man has said. I only know what somebody on the internet said. Who knows? And in context, maybe it made sense. I don't know what the conversation was. I don't know whether he was making a point, like, because I've said crazy stuff that if you took out of sequence, you think like that's a crazy thing to say. But as part of a broader point, it does actually make sense. Missy says he's earning his immunity, ye older-fashioned away. Dear. Amy says, this is an honour. Thank you for your energy and effort to help us. Oh, you're very welcome, Amy. You're very welcome. Hope says people are sick because we're in a pandemic. That's true. Thank you, Hope. People are here because humans had sex and made us here. Come here. Isn't that weird? All those things. There's talking about genetics and intergenerational trauma. Think about how much sex had to happen for me to be here and for you to be here. But don't think about it too much, because it wouldn't have happened between people that you would want to think about it happening with, right? You don't want to think literally. You want to think in an abstract way. You want to think abstract humans having abstract sex through a very blurry, distant filter over there. You don't want it to be. You ever notice that? Like I thought about this a few times. Like, so humans are, as mammals, were considered quite sexual, not hypersexual, but quite sexual. Like a lot of our behavior is heavily sexual, like chimps. And like our marketing is sexual, our ideology is sexual, the way that we do everything has like a sexual undercurrent to it. Our physiology is very, very sexual. We have these genitals that are like on the front of your body, and there they are, they're facing forward. And you think, yeah, we're quite sexual, but, and we all think about sex. I don't know what the psychologists say. I don't know, let's say it's like 30 times a day or 60 times a day or something like that. But the sex that you're thinking about, we think about, and the sex that you're desirous of, when you actually try and break it down, it's in a tiny, tiny, narrow band. Like the type of partners you're interested in compared to the overall population are fractional. And the type of sex that you're thinking about is fractional to the type of sex that's actually going on out there. I think about these things too much, but sometimes I forget to do that. I forget to filter. And then I just think about like octogenarians having group sex. My imagination's really good. And then I'm nearly ready to throw up. Anyway, away from that now. Amber says, do you think there are differences in recovering from abusive parents? Hello, where's that gone? Oh, there it is. Is there differences in recovering from abusive parents than in recovering from abusive romance relationships? Yeah, there are. Definitely. There's definitely differences, but the core principles are so close that it's not huge. So if you had a group, we were all meeting in a church, and 6 till 7 is the abusive relationship with parents, and 7 till 8 is the abusive relationship with partners, and one night the 7 to 8 class is closed because the group therapist, she got a cold, you can do it all together and still have a meaningful conversation about consent, having your boundaries broken, being gaslit, being lied to, being exploited, the effects it has on you psychologically, physiologically. I mean, it's so close. But if you're asking me, are the differences significant and meaningful? I have to say yes, because it's true, but they're not huge. Leaving my dad felt like a breakup. I never had other relationships. Yeah, well, he's, that's your, what do they say in object relations theory and psychiatry? That's your primary object. That's your first experience of attachment and love with a man is your father. So yeah, it's a very very deep connection. Wilhelm Reich, anyone? So because I was talking about sex. A few swigs of Bragg's apple cider vinegar will knock anything out of you. Burns like hell going down. You're saying that apple cider vinegar will knock the COVID out of me? Just get some garlic cloves. Just rub them on your earlobes like this. And then some tears of a gypsy, and you put them inside your nose. And then pregnant cow's milk, and you rub it on your. Oh, that's what I got for being sarcastic. God's wrath. Peace Shepherding says, I'm sorry you're sick. How do you balance setting attainable goals against the fear you will not climb out, if not terribly hard driving, causing freeze? How do you balance setting attainable goals against the fear? You will not climb out if you're not terribly hard driving, causing a freeze response. I sense the fear in you. Embrace the hatred, young Skyward. No, I sense the frustration in you, like you're working against yourself a little bit. You're probably flashbacking quite hard, and so I could give you an answer to your question that would allow you to bypass the real problem, but you must bring your emotional flashbacks under control, because what I intuitively feel in my chakras right here is a lot of perfectionism. It's a lot of perfectionism. And perfectionism indicates a very rigid, very strict and bullying superego. So unless we deal with our emotional flashbacks first, we're always going to be held in the grip of that powerful superego. And this is, I suspect, again, I have many suspicions here, not much facts, but there's another suspicion I have. This is a little bit of a game that the superego is playing. And it's saying to you, you must choose attainable goals. But if you choose attainable goals, then they won't be hard enough, and then you'll get nothing done. But if they're not hard enough, and then you won't get anything done, then you're going to freeze in the effort of doing the hard things. So you need attainable goals. And the end result is, as you've said, you just freeze. And that's the point. So the superego has done a bait and switch on you so that you end up freezing. This is like narcissistic abuse. What was the end result? Oh, I got really angry, or I got really sad, or I gave up on my favorite project. Okay, that was the point. That was the point. The balancing of the setting of the attainable goal versus the hard goal, because if I don't do the hard, that's all nonsense. It's a distraction. The point is to get you to freeze. So if you're not, because logically, if I give you a logical prescription here, it's not going to do you any good, is it? Logically, if you're doing nothing because you're freezing, then you stick with the soft attainable goals so that you're doing something. That's a logical answer. But you're capable of coming to that logical conclusion yourself. There's something else going on here, and I think it's that you're flashbacking quite hard. Thank you for the recommendation to drink apple cider. I'm sorry I teased you about garlic on the ears and gypsy tears up my nose. It takes me back to Bosnia, where when there was an illness or a problem, it was always garlic, lemon, honey, rakia, or some combination of the above. Some genetic, epigenetic sleep combination of the above in some syntax, in some form. Once I had food poisoning, and I was given garlic, lemon, honey, and rakia, and I puked my fucking guts up. Didn't give. This is the Bosnian solution. Drink this, you will feel better, make you better, your stomach will settle. It didn't settle a thing. You may as well have thrown a grenade down there. It's not just Bosnians. All of y'all, you need to know, rakia does not solve everything. There's people watching this going, this guy's an idiot. Rakia solves everything. Rakia is the extremely potent alcohol that is served in the former Yugoslavia. You can remove nail polish with it. You can clean the engine of a boat with it. And if you're thirsty and desire brain damage, you can even drink it. Okay, let's do a couple more questions. Snort some apple cider vinegar and your sinuses will clear up. You fucking snort it. You snort it and film it. Let's put that on. I put it on my channel. I'll go viral and take the views and the Google ad revenue. You fucking snort it. Come on. You guys, you're revising stuff that you've never done. There's no way you've snorted apple cider vinegar. There's just no way. Show me a video, one video of somebody snorting apple cider vinegar. That's insane. Oh dear. Thank you for the laugh, though. This was very good. Okay. Right. Don't give me any more folksy home medicine treatments. Give me a question on the topic. I don't want ginger. I don't want lemons. Don't worry about that. I'll be fine. It's already passing. It's already leaving my body. Fucking hell. You chat to a group of codependents, they're like, that was nice. Thank you. That helps. Now what can we offer you? Nothing. You don't need to offer me anything. It's fine. Just sit there feeling guilty that you listened to me and you didn't offer anything back. I'll give you a mailing address and you can send me cookies. Hit the like button. That's what you can do. Is this the second time you've caught COVID now? God damn it, guys. UG Rose is here. Hey, UG. Rub relish in your armpits at dawn facing northeast. Singing the Macarena. Oh dear. Jason Bradley says, I usually gargle WD-40 for colds. Oh my days. Yeah. Just take some bullets from Kalashnikov, open bullet, put powder inside, mix with cocaine, rakia, snort, puke it, take the puke, throw it at a goat by the light of full moon. Colloidal silver if you're snorting. Nobody's going to stop. All right, guys. Okay. Oh God. You don't have COVID-19. You would complain about other things. I don't know, mate. Tell the NHS. They say I've got it. I have the symptoms. The doctor said, you know what I'm going to do here, Michael? I'm going to take the advice of the doctor who I physically gave a snot and tonsil glue sample to over you. I know I'm an asshole. I'm a fucking asshole over here, but that's what I'm going to do this one time. I'm going to trust the doctor who had sample of my bodily fluids, took them to a laboratory and came back with a result over a random guy on the internet. Strowman says, ew. Yeah, tonsil glue. They took my tonsil glue. A Spanish lady, actually. I'm here in the UK. It was like, I tried to pay for it to do it privately. And they said, why do you want this? And I was like, I have symptoms. And they're like, you can't be here with symptoms. Go to the big tent in the middle of town that looks like a scene from an apocalypse movie. Well, that's what I went and did. And they say, I have the plague. I can't taste. I can't smell. All I can do is receive advice on which orifices to put the garlic, the honey, the ginger, the rakia, the colloidal silver, and the gypsy's tears. Okay, this is which one? They don't tell you. They don't tell you the brand. They just go, you have it. I don't think I can't say what I was about to say because they'll be done for medical misinformation. I'm not sure they can tell you which brand of trainer you've been issued for the flu season. I think they just go, you have trainer. PCR tests don't do that as far as I know. Well, let's not talk about that anymore. Gets a bit squirrely when we start chatting about that stuff. The 30-day challenge is coming up soon. We're going to start it on the 5th of January, but we're going to take the memberships for it before We're a bit more organized this time. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to open up and let people who are on the email list join up for the special offer price. And then I'll release it to everybody else who's following on YouTube at a discounted price, and then it'll go to the normal price by New Year's Eve. And then I think by the 2nd of January, we're going to stop taking people on. And then by the 5th, we'll be ready to rock and roll, and we'll get going with it. That's what's up, homies. So if you're interested, please join the mailing list in the more information bar below. And I'll pin it in the comments as well. You've been a delight. I hope that this was useful. I hope that this was interesting. If it wasn't, what can I say, comrades? Life is hard and full of pain and hardship and torture. You must simply endure it. But thank you for spending this time with me and for offering me your attention. Please be careful what you spend your time and your attention on. And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Thank you.